Patricast.
Introducing Royal Caribbean's newest ship, Icon of the Seas, the ultimate family vacation. The ultimate 6 slides, 8 neighborhoods, 0 compromise vacation. The ultimate never done that, can't wait to do it vacation. The ultimate chillin' by a different pool every day of the week vacation. This is the Icon of vacations. Icon of the Seas, arriving in 2024. Book today. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Welcome into Missing the Point. I am Michael Marcangelo, joined alongside by Broadway Joe Malkin. It's been a long time since I've said that. And today, I think what we're going to do, Joe, is we're going to do an autopsy on the Patriots, the season, that abomination of a game that happened on Saturday night. Talk a little bit about Dallas and the 49ers and that shit show as well, and then preview divisional weekend. But before we get into anything specific, what were your overall thoughts of the quality of football that was played last weekend? Super wild card weekend, the first weekend ever that there was a Monday night football wild card game.
No pleasantries, huh? Good in you. So the super wild card weekend, which I thought was an interesting name for it. I saw what they were trying to do, Super Bowl weekend, blah, 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 all this other stuff. I get it. I honestly loved watching every single game, and even the Patriots game, and I'll explain that when we get into that game. But man, it was exciting. It was fun. It had a little bit of everything. You know, we saw a second-year quarterback, might as well be a rookie since he went out with a bad knee injury last year, and Joe Burrow cement himself as an NFL quarterback. I mean, this guy's the real deal. He's got the attitude. He's got the intestinal fortitude to play in the NFL. They do need to put an offensive line in front of them. You know, it'll be interesting. The Titans are the number one. The Packers are the number one in the NFC. The 49ers, I loved watching the 49ers win. I think it would have been that way regardless of who they played. But I loved that they went into AT&T Stadium and beat the Cowboys on their own. The 49ers are fun to watch. Kyle Shanahan is a real deal NFL head coach. You know, and I think we all kind of knew that already. I think the way he carries himself and the way he treats that team in San Francisco, he's a good drafter. He's a good developer of talent, you know, and I think I have some other feelings on that, but we'll get to that when we get to the Dallas game. Loved watching. Hey, Matt Stafford, your guy, won his first playoff game. He looked like he finally had a coach. He looked like he finally had a coach that knew what he was doing. And you know what? I'll say it right here, right now. I've said it already last week. I was wrong about Odell Beckham Jr. and his dad might be the best marketing professional in the world for how he mishandled the situation with his son in Cleveland. He's been nothing but a model citizen for the Rams. And I don't think it would have been the same had he gone to other places, including New England. I think he's where he should be right now. Tampa, whatever. Tampa's Tampa. That team they just look good. They look good. And the Chiefs played Big Ben in his swan song, and I know the overall overarching feelings on Big Ben on this show and how we all feel about him in his off-field incidents and everything. This was probably his last game in the NFL. And if we don't take into account the off-field stuff, the guy's a Hall of Famer, and he had an incredible football career and played for one of the best franchises in the NFL. But I think it was only right that the Chiefs won to go on to play the Bills at home this weekend.
Yeah, so we don't need to get into the Big Ben stuff. I think we've done a really good job covering that. I'll just say that I thought it was very poetic that he was forcefully and unconsentingly screwed out of that game. That's what he deserves. So yeah, maybe he's a Hall of Famer if all you can do is look at the stats. I understand that people can. I can't, but yeah, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. My overarching sentiments for the weekend, though, I loved it. I loved the 2 games on Saturday, the 3 on Sunday, and then the Monday night game. I thought that they did a really good job promoting it. Some of the games didn't really live up to the hype. obviously the Patriots game was the one that we could talk about. And for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, you might notice a new accessory on my face. It's because I firmly believe that God is taking away my vision for having watched that game for 3 hours on Saturday. So these are penance, as the Catholics would say. But I thought that the debacle in Dallas, man, if there was any team that you could predict such an unpredictable clusterfuck at the end, it's a Mike McCarthy coach team. And we'll go into that a little bit more. But no, I thought the games were really entertaining. There was the blowout, the Bucks Eagles game. That, I think, that was what we thought it was going to be. The only shot that the Eagles had were to come out like really strong, and they just couldn't do it. Looks like the Tampa Bay defense turned it on. So let's not waste any time. Let's just get right into this. Okay, so the Patriots and the Bills, wild card weekend. We all had mentioned, right, that going into this game, they needed to do as much as they could to replicate their success in Buffalo 5 weeks ago. They needed to really control the pace and the clock, and they didn't do any of those things. The fact that you had a Bill Belichick led defense, again, because I don't think that his son is calling the shots. Although after what I saw, I kind of hope that that's the truth. That's actually the truth. The fact that Buffalo had 7 straight drives that ended in a touchdown, that's embarrassing. That's never happened in the history of any Bill Belichick coach team, whether he was a defensive coordinator or anything. So yeah, 47-17 was the final score, if you can believe it. And I think you agree with this, Joe. It wasn't even that close.
No, it wasn't that close. And I look at this game from a lot of perspectives, and I want to, because we're a primarily New England podcast, I like to look at this game from the point of view of the Buffalo Bills. And now a look inside my personal life. Saturday night, I went with a couple of friends to the casino. We watched the first half of the game at the casino, and we said, you know what? We're done. I can't do this anymore. And driving home, listening to it on the radio, I finally called my buddy who I had gone to the casino with, and we drove separately. And I said, we got to stop for a beer. I can't not watch the end of this game, and I don't want to do it at home. So we met up for a beer. And in the first half of that game, my thoughts were very much, wow, this sucks. Look at how poorly they're playing. And in the second half, it switched to look at how perfect the Buffalo Bills are planning, coaching, playing, and executing this football game. They messed with Bill Belichick for 60 minutes, and they never stopped. They didn't relent. They didn't pull their foot off the gas until the clock hit 0 in the fourth quarter. And we saw that when they threw a touchdown pass to an offensive lineman.
Oh, yeah.
And that put a cherry on top. And I, as a Patriots fan, this is going to sound bad, but as a football fan, I loved every single second of that shellacking. And it's weird to come out like out loud, but for some reason I enjoyed it. And I think I've come up with the reasons why, but go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if you just look at this game as an independent football fan, right? We talked about that last game in Buffalo where, it was BDE by Belichick, right? He just walked in there and said, hey, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run the ball down your throat 45 times. Stop me. So what McDermott and Josh Allen said this time is, hey, we're just going to throw on you. Mm-hmm. Stop us. You couldn't do it. So to see the pendulum swing it like so dramatically in what was such a short amount of time. But then if you think back to that game in Foxborough, the Bills haven't punted against the Patriots since Buffalo. So right. I don't know if they walked in there, if the Patriots walked in there thinking that they should be confident. If they did, I honestly don't know why that would have been the case. I think walking into that game, they lost 3 of their last 4, which is again one of the most un-Bill Belichickian things that we've ever seen. I mean, I think it's happened once in that 2018 year where they had a collapse in December. But again, they had Brady, they had Edelman, they had Gronk, so they turned it around. But this game, the one thing I do want to say is I don't blame Mac. I thought I actually think Mac did pretty well in the sense that he showed me that he's completely bought in. And you saw him in the fourth quarter when the game was way out of hand, running downfield to lead a block. Like, that's just not something that a quarterback would often do in this league. And that Micah Hyde interception was just a perfect play. Now, Aguilar should have turned around and made a play on the ball. He didn't, and Hyde was in the right spot. But I thought the one bright spot in this game was obviously, I think it's still Mac. I think another year in the system, he's going to do a lot better. So to take a page out of your book, I'll say it again. I've said it before. I was wrong about Mac Jones. I think him being the starter put us in a good place. But I think we were both wrong about this defense.
I think we were. And to cover Mac a little bit, it's interesting looking at his numbers. If we will all remember, in that game in Buffalo, he only threw 3 passes, completed 2 for 19 yards. So basically, in a 16-game season, Mac Jones threw for 3,800 yards, 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and made the playoffs on a 10-7 team that, as you mentioned, what the Bills did is they just threw all over the Patriots. And Devin Singletary figured out how to be a running back the second half of the season, which, it really started I don't want to say after the first Patriots game in Buffalo, but he was kind of leading up to it and then really chugged along, helped my fantasy team down the stretch. But what I saw Saturday night from the Buffalo Bills, to kind of revert away from your segue here, but before we dive into the Patriots defense and the other questions we have to ask here about the Patriots, what I saw Saturday was the Buffalo Bills transition from the little sisters of the poor to the hero for unseating the villain, and they will quickly become the villain. I said it in the preseason, that team's a wagon, and I thought I was going to be wrong. I was right.
Yeah,
I was 100% right. That team, Josh Allen is a very good, and he makes bad decisions from time to time, but he really cut down on those this year. He's a real NFL quarterback, and Sean McDermott, while I think sometimes he lets his emotions get the best of him, is a top-tier NFL head coach, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Top-tier NFL head coach. And I think a lot of, we talk about it a lot here in New England with Bill, where, we've seen it before where he goes out and gets revenge on other teams. The way he always coaches his team against the New York Jets, the way he always coaches his team against other certain coaches or certain teams or certain players. Sean McDermott is now doing that with the Patriots and saying, I don't care what the score is. We are going to run it up on you, and we are not going to stop until the clock hits 0 or stop us. And I love that about the Buffalo Bills.
I think when you have the chance to make a divisional opponent realize in the most important game of the year that they are not in the same class as you, you have to do it. And the Bills did that. And I thought that the game plan was perfect from McDermott and the Bills. I thought, Josh Allen, 21 of 25, 5 touchdowns. It's absolutely insane what he did. And to that point, it leads me to believe that what we saw during that 7-game winning streak, and even what we saw in that 50 burger that they dropped on Jacksonville, is just the same thing that we saw back in 2019 when they started out 8-0. Like, that defense was playing at a higher level than they had previously, but they were a paper defense. They weren't going against really any good quarterbacks minus Justin Herbert. And I think, here's my hot take, I think they bought in. I think they believed their own hype.
Well, they've done it before.
Yeah, well, they always had that one thing on offense that could help you overcome it, right?
Sure.
And now I think they find themselves in a situation where they think that they can no-show a game and still win. Turns out, this version of the Patriots when they no-show a game, they lose by 20 or 30. That's like they're just not that good enough anymore to be able to dog a game and still be competitive. And I have a bunch of things that I want to talk about on the defensive side of the ball. So I think we should just stick with this game right now, and then we can talk a little bit about what we think they're going to do in the offseason before we move on to the rest of the schedule. But Devin McCourty, he's I don't know if he's out of position more than he used to be, or if he just can't cover up for his age anymore.
You remember the first year when they switched him from corner to safety?
Yeah.
And he had a really, really tough time transitioning. And a lot of people were quick to say, oh, he can't play safety, which for those of us, for everybody, I mean, they're two different positions on the field, and they're two different positions in X's and O's. So, and he struggled with that. I think he's struggling again, and I think he's getting too old. I think he's done. I think he's done. I think this is going to be his last year, or he'll come back next year and be a mentor. I don't know what for the younger safeties, because Kyle Duggar can sure as hell play. You know, there's some guys on that defense that can play. I'm with you on McCourty, and I would also throw Dante Hightower into this conversation. And I had this conversation with Ray Sean a few weeks ago, and Ray was, not to call him out when he can't defend himself, but Ray was basically saying, you know, he's coming off an injury, this and that. And I said, but he's always been coming off an injury. And we kind of compared him as a collective to Gerard Mayo towards the end of his career, where he's just lost enough of a step. And they were very different linebackers, but he's just lost enough of a step where he just can't keep up anymore. And he'll make plays from time to time, because he's still a very intelligent, smart, and quick thinking football player. That's who Dante Hightower is, but he's not there physically anymore. I think him and McCourty are kind of in the same class in this conversation. I think they would both be better served retiring at this point, although you lose a lot of your veteran leadership, because I also think you're going to lose Matthew Slater at the end of this year, because I think he might retire. I mean, this is going to be a year where we see even more youth. I mean, we've seen it already, right? We've seen the Duggars take over. We've seen the Mac Jones take over. We've seen the Christian Barmore take over on defense. We've got two young backs, because there's still Brandon Bolden back there. James White, if he can recover and come back. We're going to see more youth, and we might see some more of these 10 and 17s. But I think somebody else that's lost a step, Mike, and I know I keep expanding on this, but this is kind of the conversation I think you're looking for here, is I think Bill Belichick's lost a step. I think his game is too conservative for the style of play in the NFL at this point. And I think I think it carried him as far as it could. We all know the defensive side of the ball. He's always been one to draft the prototypical linebacker, the Ted Johnsons, the Willie McGinnis, which he didn't draft, but he inherited, Teddy Bruschi, who he inherited. He loves those guys because of their size. And he can't do that anymore. The game is too fast, especially with the Dolphins and the Bills running what they have out. And I wouldn't sleep on Robert Saleh in New York either. I think he can turn that team around pretty quick. And I think Zach Wilson can be a good NFL quarterback. So point of this is, just like Devin McCourty, I think Bill's lost a step, and I don't think he's going anywhere, but we can talk about this when we get to the where do they go from here segment.
Yeah, I think I actually 100% agree with you. Now, the one thing that I don't know if I disagree, but I want to talk a little bit more about it is I don't think his coaching has lost his step, but I think you're right. You hit the nail on the head where he's still just trying to draft Lawrence Taylor, right? That same framework. And then like what you said, the Teddy Bruschi's, Ted Johnsons, and that'll win you regular season games against bad teams. That style will still work. But in a playoff situation where Bill Belichick's defense always predicates himself on having a script and just following the orders and doing your job, right? We all hear that, do your job. Josh Allen doesn't follow a script. When things break down, he's able to iterate on it. And then what? And then you get situations where Devin McCourty is maybe just maybe 6 months too old to catch up to be where he was supposed to be, or where he would have been 2 years ago. Dante Hightower, again, he right now he looks a lot like Gerard Mayo. And I'm not here to bash Gerard Mayo. Gerard Mayo was always a guy that you could count on to have 100 tackles in a season, but you couldn't remember one of them. Dante Hightower has made some of the most impactful plays over the last 10 years for the New England Patriots, and he just doesn't have it anymore. So you're right, but I do think not to segue into this next segment yet. I do think that if there is a mass exodus due to age, that might force Bill's hand to think about what type of players he needs to draft, because there aren't going to be those 6'5" or 6'3", 275-pound linebackers in the first or second round. And when Belichick picks a defensive player in the first round, 90% of the time they're a winner. I mean, he knows how to grade first round defensive talent. Stay the fuck away from wide receivers, but he knows how to draft first round talent. So, do you have any closing thoughts on this game before we move to what I think is going to be the most entertaining discussion that we're going to have?
I look at this game and I see what it was and what the Patriots were, and everybody wanted to make I don't want to say comparison, but the likeness between this team and the 2001 team. And I just think in this game leading up to it, there was a lot of, there was too many hands in the cookie jar from somewhere, somehow. And the way this game went down, it had an air about it from the opening kickoff that it was just going to go the Bills' way. And it was a 4.5 point spread going in. You're in that stadium. I don't know if that stadium has ever been that loud. Bills fans are some of the best fans. I mean, they love their guys and they are loud and they are rowdy. But man, that stadium with a rookie quarterback in there, I mean, there's a reason why a rookie quarterback has never won a Super Bowl. And that's it right there. I love the way the Bills played that game.
Yeah, I think my final thoughts on the game was it felt a lot like the 2009 wildcard game against the Ravens, except it felt like in that situation, the Ravens caught them off guard with that 83-yard run by Ray Rice. Yep. In this situation, they weren't caught off guard; they just weren't prepared. They just it's like, what do you do when you find out that you're not good enough and your arms just aren't long enough to box with God? That's what was happening in that game. And no matter what they did, by the way, I do hope that Stephen Belichick was calling that game, because the fact that there were no changes and no adjustments made on the defensive side of the ball that entire time, when after the third series, I could have told you what was going to happen. Everyone knew what was going to happen. Josh Allen was just going to stand back, or there could be that play on the first drive where he had 10 seconds to throw it. 10 seconds in the NFL. Now, he wasn't standing in the pocket by, just standing there. I get it. He was flushed out. But the fact that you spent so much money in this offseason to improve your team, and the most pivotal purchase in the offseason was Matthew Judon, someone to go in there and disrupt quarterbacks, and he couldn't do it. Or when you needed him the most, and down the stretch, he couldn't do it. Which leads me to,
you're gonna go here already.
Oh yeah, I can't resist.
All right, go ahead.
A little while back on this show, you can check the show notes when we last spoke to Karen Gregan, right before the season started. I've been preaching and asking all the time about, I just need to know that Matthew Judon isn't the new Adelius Thomas. Because, and I'll give you a little bit of context before we go into it, but when you think about Adelius Thomas and you think about Matt Judon, they came from a Baltimore scheme where they weren't scripted on what to do. They were literally put in a game to create havoc, right, and to cause chaos. So typically, when a player like that, now I'm not saying that he's undisciplined. I hope that nobody takes it that way. But when you rely more on instinct to make an impact in the game, and then you come to work for a guy like Belichick who wants you to do exactly what he tells you to do, because if everyone does that, the defense will be perfect. At sometimes there's an inflection point. And I think that we hit the inflection point in week 13 with Judon. Now I've heard reports that he was hurt, he was injured. Great. If you go back and you read articles, he's always hurt or injured around week 13 of an NFL season. There have been rumblings that when the team's not doing well, or he feels like he's not being utilized to the best of his ability, he gets a little bit less engaged. Now, I don't know that he was dogging it. Maybe he just ran out of gas. Maybe that's all true. But when I said I hope that he's not the next Adelius Thomas, he isn't. Adelius was better. Adelius Thomas, in his 2 years prior to coming to New England, and in his first year in New England. So I did this little stat comparison, right? Because I was really juiced up for this. So we're going to compare 2019 through 2021 Judon, and to 2005 through 2007 Adelius Thomas. Cool.
Okay.
Games. They both averaged right around 36 games during that period of time. Pretty good. Tackles. Adelius Thomas had 193. Judon had 113 over the span of 3 seasons. Let's talk about sacks. Judon, 28. All that is a 12.5 this year. Adelius Thomas, 26.5. Forced fumbles. Adelius Thomas, 6. Judon, 4. Interceptions. Adelius Thomas, 4. Two of which were returned for touchdowns. Matthew Judon, 0. So what you're seeing here is that during the course of this time, over the average game, Adelius Thomas would account for 4 tackles, 4 solo tackles, 1 QB hit, and at least, I think he averaged 0.7 sacks. Judon is 2.4 tackles, about half a sack, but is forcing way less fumbles and isn't as impactful in the last 2 years of his stint in Baltimore and the first year in New England. The reason why I bring this up, and you might be saying, like, why do you care? Like, it's those are pretty good stats. Adelius Thomas had a really good 2007 for the New England Patriots. He was actually the best defensive player on that team in the playoffs. In that run, in those 3 postseason games in 2007, Adelius Thomas had 2.5 sacks, averaged 5 tackles a game. In his 1 playoff game this year, and in the 3 that he had with Baltimore, Judon had 3 solo tackles total and forced and have 1 sack. So I think what I'm telling you here is, if the cliff is the same for Judon that it was for Adelius Thomas, this is a bad contract. It's a really bad contract. And all the things that I was worried about at the beginning of the season, maybe it took a little while for them to manifest, but oh boy, did they. And your most expensive purchase on defense since Stephon Gilmore did absolutely nothing for you and down the stretch, and when you needed him most in a postseason game. So I just wanted to take this time to most humbly and graciously say that I was right.
Mike, would you consider yourself a hypochondriac?
No.
You wouldn't consider, because right now I think you're being a hypochondriac when it comes to these 2 players. I think because you have it in your mind that you made this comparison, that because of the way the end of this first season went with Judon here, I think you're automatically saying, because there is a comparison here. They both, we can honestly say that Judon was one of the best defensive players for the New England Patriots this year, even if it was just weeks 1 through 13.
Yep.
Right. Adelius Thomas was one of the best players on the New England defense in his year 30 season in 2007. Both of those years for those 2 guys respectively fell off from their previous year in Baltimore. And then this is where I'm kind of agreeing with you. If Judon follows the same trend as Adelius Thomas, then yes, in 2 years' time, I will say to you, bad contract. You were right. Well, right now, I don't think you're right because of the style of team that he came in to. Matthew Judon is expected to be the guy. When Adelius Thomas came into that team, he wasn't a cornerstone of that team. He was added in as a major piece. as Matthew Judon is. But Matthew Judon right now is expected to be the cornerstone of that defense. And Adalius Thomas came in, and the expectations are high here in New England anyway. And this is a conversation we had with Karen as well. Can he handle the pressure of the Boston New England media? Can he do that? So far, so good. So far, so good. He's been pretty gracious with the media. I think there's been a little animosity in his voice towards the coaching staff and the players. I think there has been that. I think there's short form of this. I think there's a little bit of Adalius Thomas in Matthew Judon, but I think you're being a hypochondriac when it comes to this comparison right now because you have a cough and you think it's a cold.
It's COVID, by the way. It's not just a cold. But so I understand what you're saying, but here's where I'm coming from. We don't have many comparisons, like direct comparisons, to make in a situation where Belichick will do almost the exact same thing in a situation that turned out not to have worked out the first time. Adalius Thomas and Judon are very comparable players in the sense that the majority of their success that they had in Baltimore, they had because they did go off script. They played more on instinct. They made the call on the field to make that play. And what we've learned, based off of all this unprecedented access that Belichick has given us over the last 4 or 5 years, is that he really does preach, I don't need anyone to be a hero. If you all are where I tell you to be, things will work out. So sooner or later, my argument would just be that if you know that you were brought in here to be the guy, why would you then, once you're here, be told that you're only going to do what I tell you to do, right? Why did you pay him all of that money to come in? And if it was based off of him creating so much havoc and being such a great instinctive player, to really just tell him to just run through the gaps and do this and do that. Now trust me, I understand why Belichick does it, because if you look at the Baltimore game or in all of the games that they lost, Judon would over pursue the quarterback, right? So he would always give them a way out. They could just step up and run. Belichick's defense is predicated on the fact that you stick to the corners. You don't let them get outside, and then you can prevent a big play. So there are pitfalls with Judon's style of play. Now, I don't know which one's better, right? I just know Belichick's won a lot of Super Bowls. That's all I know. And I think to your original, one of the points that you made about how they all fell off after their last season in Baltimore, Judon had 6.5 sacks last year, 12.5 this year. So he got better for the first 13 games of this year.
In that stat category, he absolutely got better. I just mean overall, if you look at the overall stat line, if there was some metric, which there probably is, there has to be nowadays, I think they both there's comparisons when they move to New England from Baltimore. And that could be a Bill thing. It could, we all know that John Harbaugh is much more of a let the dogs off the leash and see what they can do type of coach, where Bill is more like, let's hold the reins, let's analyze, let's game plan and then execute. And I don't know. I go back and forth on this all the time on what the motivation was to spend money this past offseason from Bill. Was there pressure from Robert Kraft? Was it him that finally decided, hey, these guys are all out on the market, I'm going to go get them? I think overall, Judon is a hit so far. I think Kendrick Bourne is a hit. I think Hunter Henry is a hit. And right now, Nelson Aguilar, Jonnu Smith, and Jalen Mills are misses.
Yeah.
And I look at the quality of the players, and I hope I don't want to say this from a Bill Belichick crony standpoint. I just want to say it from a Patriots fan standpoint of, I hope this season was more about learning what he had than attempting to win the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Because there's teams, there's teams that tank more so in the NBA than in the NFL. But The Jets very easily could have tanked this year, and you could tell with the amount of fight that they had at the end of the year, they weren't going to tank. I really wish Miami kept Brian Flores, because Bill Belichick's in trouble already as it is in this division, because Buffalo's really good, Miami's on the up, and the Jets are going to follow behind. I know the Jets seem like a cursed franchise, but I sometimes wonder and hope, or wonder what the motivation behind the signings was and spending that money, and hope that it was, these are 4-year deals. We know we're getting a rookie quarterback. This is what we're attempting to do. Let's see what we have. And then in years 2 and 3, we'll move forward. And then in year 4, we'll see what we're doing. Like, it's clearly a rebuild period for the Patriots. And I know that they finished 10-7, and a lot of that goes back to Bill Belichick, but a lot of that goes back to the game plan and the players that he puts on the field.
Here's the thing, though, Joe, because I think what you just said is important, and I want to talk a little bit about it. I do think that regardless of whether he'll ever admit it or not, having the guy that you let walk out the door go down and win a Super Bowl in his first year without you, and you go 7-9, regardless of the situation, let's just say they were all identical, that adds a little bit of pressure. And then on top of that is, there's always been this common belief in the NFL that you can't rebuild a team through free agency. You have to rebuild it through the draft. That's true. But what we thought were our biggest glaring needs going into the season, because remember, we thought we still had Stephon Gilmore along with J.C. Jackson, right, on defense. We didn't know how old the secondary was going to get so quickly. Our biggest needs were on offense. Bill can't draft offensive players, aside from quarterbacks. I'll tell you right now, he's hit on more quarterbacks than he's ever missed on. You can just go down the list. Brady's an easy one, right? But if you think about Matt Castle, you think about Jacoby Brissett, Jimmy Garoppolo, those are all hits. Ryan Mallett was a big bust, but again, I think you can trust him in a top 3 round position with the quarterback, and even running back. I think Ray and I went through this a couple of weeks ago. He's hit on most of his running backs, but their glaring need was pass catchers, and he can't draft those. So I think what he did there, rebuilding the team, rebuilding the offense through free agency, made a lot of sense. And listen, the Judon thing, it might turn out that I'm unequivocally wrong. Like, if he goes on for the next 3 years of his contract to average 10 sacks a year, sure. Listen, we'll still be on here. That'll be episode 484, and I'll be here to tell you that I was wrong about that. But I do think that there is something to kind of peel back the onion here. You can point to, I'd say, like 15 plays throughout the course of the season where it was apparent that Judon did not do what he was told to do, and it did not result in a positive way for the Patriots. There was another guy that's actually still on the team in his third stint back that is known for doing that, Jamie Collins. Bill shipped him out twice. So I think Bill's tied to Judon. I don't know if his coaching style is going to change to allow Judon to flourish more. But I do think it is interesting that the minute that they got punched in the face by Indy, he just disappeared. I mean, he was gone. And I think that might tie back into what I originally said, is that they bought into their own hype, right? And I think we all did too. They were playing so well on defense, and it looked like that could be a way for them to make it a deeper run to the postseason. But I think the Judon point I really wanted to talk about. But then before we transition to, what do they do now, which again will be a good segment, I think we learned a lot about the mental fortitude of this team, with the exception of a few. I mean, I think, like I said, Mac Jones, Damian Harris, they're bought in. Kendrick Bourne, bought in. Jacoby Myers, hope he stays, bought in. Hunter Henry, this is the first game in his first year in his professional career that he was available to play the entire season. So clearly he's bought in. And you can't get much worse than Jonnu Smith did this year. So hopefully that's good for us moving forward. But aside from the players that I just mentioned, Hightower, McCarthy, for different reasons, but I think, Judon, I think they have to take a real serious look at themselves and wonder if this is what they signed up for. Now, only one of them is under contract for a longer period of time. And is he going to conform to the system, or will the system conform to him?
McCourty's done. That's been that, and I said this a little while ago. He's done. He's floated retirement before. He floated it after the 2019 season. Yep. I think he's cooked. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your time here in New England. He's one of the best to ever put the uniform on, and he's one of the most loyal to ever put the uniform on. One guy you forgot to mention in your bought in is Ramondre Stevenson.
Oh yeah,
who Ray and I have been drooling over all season because this kid is just really freaking good. I think Jakob Johnson bought in. I think Trent Brown came back and bought in. I think there's a lot of guys that are buying in, Mike. I do. I think the mental fortitude we saw diminish was after that Indy game. I don't think it was just Matthew Judon. I think there was a lot of air let out of the balloon that is the New England Patriots. And I don't know that that's I don't want to say a bad thing, but that's fine. It's the way the team is, because like you said earlier, they don't have that guy that was there to pick them up every step of the way. And Mac Jones isn't that personality yet. He's never going to be Tom Brady. He's never, ever, ever going to be Tom Brady. But after this season, all I want to see him do, and all we all should want to see him do, is be Mac Jones.
Yep.
Be Mac Jones.
For sure.
That kid's smart. He has no problem laying his body out for a block. There's been a couple really funny blocks during the year with him. He's fun to watch. He's not a statue like Tom Brady. That's part of the thing that I like about him, is he clearly has fun out there. When Brian Hoyer threw the touchdown pass to Jacoby Myers against, who the heck was that against? Regardless, it was in garbage time. And the first guy down there was Mac Jones off the bench. And it's just, you can just see that as a rookie, he's bought in. He's not afraid to get in the face of his teammates. He's not afraid to do what needs to be done to attempt to get the job done. And unfortunately, I just don't think the team was good enough. It's so funny because we can go around and we can talk about the age of players X, Y, and Z, the buy-in of players A, B, and C. We can talk about the youth. We can talk about this. We can talk about that. Plain and simple, the team just wasn't good enough. The team wasn't good enough. They were 10-7. They went on a 7-game run. We've seen teams do it before. You mentioned it about Pittsburgh last year when they started 11-0 with a very aging Ben Roethlisberger, with a young team around him. It was a young team around him. And yet still, we can make these comparisons because there's been a lot of this stuff about Mike Tomlin floated out there. I think Mike Tomlin's a much better coach than a lot of you guys think, but it says something when he has that team that he had, and still started the season 11-0 and still finished with a winning record, and then lost in the playoffs. His team just wasn't that good enough. And sometimes we're going to have those teams. We look at the Bengals. Are the Bengals good enough? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they're just riding a high. Are the Titans good enough? Yeah, they are. Are the Packers good enough? Yup. Are the Bucks good enough? Absolutely. Chiefs? Sure. Bills? We saw it. Rams? Yeah. The only two teams that I look at left in the playoffs and say they might be missing one or two things.
They're playing each other.
I was going to say the Bengals and the 49ers.
Oh, I was going to say the Packers and the 49ers, but yeah.
The Packers and the 49ers. But we can get to that shortly. But my point is, as sports fans and as podcast creators and as news media, I just don't think they were good enough. I just don't. I think there was a lot of things that, where you said McCourty and Hightower can look back and really evaluate. I think those two guys are gone. I think the coaching staff needs to evaluate what their role is and has been.
I agree.
I have an issue with Stephen Belichick and Gerard Mayo sharing responsibilities on the defense. Now, granted, excuse me, I've always been...
Yeah, it makes me want to puke too, Joe. Don't worry about it.
I know. I've always been a proponent of, we don't always need to know everything. It's just the way the news cycle works in the world and in this country now, is something is reported and now all of a sudden we feel entitled to know every single piece of information about every single story. It's like, we just don't have the brain power to do that. And it's the same thing with this. So I don't blame Bill for not naming a defensive coordinator or having two guys call the plays. The problem is, the biggest problem that I have, and that the coaching staff needs to evaluate in the offseason, is who is that guy on defense? Because Bill is the alleged defensive mastermind. You have his son, who's the defensive backs coach, who I don't know if he knows or doesn't know what he's doing. I just don't know enough about the guy. You said that on the last show too, is that we just don't know enough about Stephen Belichick. Gerard Mayo is clearly a good coach of football because there's teams interviewing him for a head coaching job. So I think his role is bigger than what we think it is, just based on the fact that he is being interviewed, because nobody's calling. They have to talk to Bill, right? They got to talk to the GM to get permission to talk to the coach. So when they call the Patriots, when you see those news things come across your cell phone or on the TV or wherever you see it or hear it, and it says Denver Broncos ask for permission to talk to linebackers coach Gerard Mayo, well, they've had to go to Bill, and they're going to say to Bill, hey, what do you know about this guy? And sell him to us.
To that point, though, why aren't they calling about Steven?
Because I don't think he has a heightened role. That's the point I'm getting to. Is I don't think he has nearly the same role as Gerard Mayo. I think he's been given too much responsibility, though. But another problem I have with this coaching staff and going deeper into this is the fact that Belichick is this defensive mastermind. He's got Gerard Mayo, who's listed as a linebackers coach, might as well be the defensive coordinator. Then he's got his son, who is also allegedly calling plays or having a big part of the defense. And then you have as a special advisor, we know what that means with the Patriots.
Oh God,
well, we have to, because he did it with Josh McDaniels after he came back from the Rams. Remember he left Denver.
Yeah, but he was only the special counselor to the offensive scheme in the playoffs that year because Billy O'Brien was still on the staff. So that was just 4 games. So
after Patricia gets fired from Detroit, he comes back as the special defensive assistant, like consultant. It's the same thing. It's the same. Mike, the difference is we like Josh McDaniels for the most part. We dislike him less than Matt Patricia. Matt Patricia can be seen on Sundays walking across the field during warmups, and he's supposed to be a special assistant or a consultant, and he's on the field. He has a bigger part. He has a bigger hand in that defense and that scheme and everything else. And that's a problem. And here's a hot take. Gerard Mayo leaves to take a head coaching position this offseason. Matt Patricia will be reinstated as defensive coordinator.
Yeah, well, that's because the Lions are still paying his contract, and Bill knows what he's worth. It's not worth anything, right? So,
but why do that? And not go get somebody that can actually call a defense?
Because Bill loves his people, and what he loves more than his people are his people coming back, and someone else paying for it. But listen, we're going to go into. I think we're going to spend a lot of time this offseason talking about the different coaches. The one thing that I'll say just about Patricia, I mean, he holds a press conference in Detroit and he says to somebody, "Why are you slouching? Like, shut up, you effing Pillsbury Doughboy. Shut up. Win a game. Beat someone besides the Patriots." Okay, so this one a little bit longer than we thought it would. Shocker. The first one is going to be a yes or no question, and I'll give you 20 seconds to expound upon it if you need to. Knowing everything that we know so far, having seen what we saw this year, was this a successful year for the New England Patriots?
Yes, absolutely. It's a rebuild year. It's a turnaround year for the New England Patriots. I don't think Bill's going anywhere. I think they found the quarterback for now in Mac Jones. I mean, everybody wants to have this conversation. Is he the guy for the next 5, 10, 15 years? Well, right now, yeah, until proven otherwise. Was it successful? Yep. They went 10-7 and they made the playoffs, and they have an actual team and vision and pathway to go on right now with a roster. I mean, sure, there's a lot of changes that need to be made. But was it a successful year? Yeah, they're reestablishing themselves, and it was call it a bridge year, call it a rebuild year. Absolutely, it was successful.
All right. So I'm going to say no, it wasn't. Here's why. I think, yes, you improved on last year's record. Great. You made it to the playoffs. Yeah, it doesn't, you got blown out. That's fine. I think that you hit on the quarterback, which is the most important piece. Typically, the team that spends the most in free agency improves the year that following season by about 3 wins on average. The year after, they decrease their win total by 5. So we won't know if this was a successful year based off of the moves that he made because he chose to rebuild in free agency until after next year. But if we just look at this year, I think the success of this year was identifying that you have a pretty good sense of what your offense could look like with Mac Jones, Damian Harris, Stevenson, and Hunter Henry. So I'm kind of split, even though I asked the question. I really want to talk about the Dallas 49ers and then the divisional and that. Where do they go from here? So I asked this question because in 2022, the Patriots have a bunch of free agents, right? So the reason why I'm hedging my bets on whether this was a successful year or not is because when you looked at the offseason after the 7-9 year last year, the glaring issue on this team was offense, right? So you spent astronomical amounts of guaranteed money to fix that. Now, here are a list of your upcoming free agents: Devin McCourty, Trent Brown, Dante Hightower, J.C. Jackson. You know what? I'm out on him.
I'm out. Listen, if they can bring in a bona fide number one corner, go ahead and sign him. But the problem is he's going to want money, and I think he's going to take it as a slap in the face.
Oh, yeah.
If they say, hey, listen, this is what happened last year. Yep, you did all this good stuff, but, this is the money we're going to give you. And I think he's going to get offended by that, and he's going to see it as them doing the same thing that they did to Gilmore.
Yep.
If they can bring in a number one and get him on good money, sure, bring him back. Otherwise, I'm out on him. He's not a number.
Right now, the Patriots are projected to have right around $20 million of cap space. So I don't know if right now you even have the money to bring in a number one.
That number will go up. He's got to make moves this offseason. And I think you're gonna see some trades, some draft pick trades. It was reported the day that we're recording this, January 19th, it was reported today that the Jets are looking to move the number 10 pick in the draft because they have another pick in the top 10. So, they have the first overall pick. So do they have first?
No, Jaguars do.
Second or third. Jaguars have the first. They have the second or third. So they're looking to move the 10th overall pick. Okay. So let's see if Bill tries to jump up this year. We were talking about that last year, right? Him moving up.
Don't. I'm mad enough, dude. Please don't do this to me. Don't.
Yeah, I know. To get Justin Fields, I'm sorry. I keep bringing up you're going to have nightmares tonight, and I am the cause. But I think he's going to go defense. He's going to go defense because he can see that they're aging. He signed young on offense, right? Like he signed the young guys on offense. So defensively, he knows he's got to go out and spend. Now he's going to spend on the defensive end, and he's going to draft on the defensive end.
So we just went over McCourty, Trent Brown, Dante Hightower, J.C. Jackson. Then you have Ted Karras. I think he's gone.
I think he's gone, but I like Ted Karras.
Yep. I think so. Matthew Slater. I think he's going to go.
I think he's retiring. I think him, McCourty, and Hightower will each ride off into the sunset on the tee behind the Foxborough Stadium, Gillette.
I think James White has a situation just like Edelman where he retires and the Patriots they make sure to compensate him. I mean, I think I don't want to. We don't need to expound more on that. Brandon Bolden, never liked him, so I'm out on him too.
I don't understand. Hey, I don't understand this hate for Brandon Bolden because there's so many people in the I don't say hate.
I think that you can just look at my feelings on Brandon Bolden and think about it this way. It's toxic indifference. Don't care about him. I feel no certain way about him. Jamie Collins, I think he's probably out.
I don't even, what did he do?
I don't know.
It was a swan song for him. I don't know if he can go catch on with somebody and play a backup role or a situational role, but he's older too now. he might retire too.
So the purpose of this exercise is that a year after you spend $250 million guaranteed to really buff up your offense, you need now to do something very similar to make yourself right on defense. And you're going to have to now make some moves. I don't know what Jonnu Smith's trade value is. It probably isn't high, but maybe you move him, or maybe you double down on him and you trade Hunter Henry. Who the hell knows, to pick up some more capital. But I think now looking at this team, you're right. They do need to draft on the defense. They also need to secure up to shore up that offensive line, because
you're losing 2 starting offensive linemen essentially. I mean, let's say that Trent Brown and Ted Karras are both gone, and the other 3 guys aren't very good. Well, David Andrews, that's not true.
I mean, you're paying Isaiah Wynn to be really good.
Yeah, but he's not.
No, I know. We're agreeing.
We're right. I know we're saying the same thing, and I know that was facetious on your part, but it's just, he's just so frustrating to watch at times.
When he's there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, if you don't have Trent Brown, David Andrews, and Ted Karras, you don't have an offensive line. I mean, that's your big 3 on the offensive line. So you're right. They're going to have to go out and do something. I think they made a mistake by not signing Joe Thuney. He's actually had a tough year in Kansas City, and a good year, but it just tough. Like whenever you're watching a Chiefs game and you hear about an offensive line mistake, it's generally Joe Thuney. I think they made a mistake not bringing him back to New England. I think even if you sign back Ted Karras and Trent Brown, you don't have a viable left tackle for your second-year quarterback.
Yep.
And I mean, the left side of the offensive line needs to be replaced. I know Ted Karras can play on the left guard side. Ted Karras can basically play any of the middle 3 positions on the offensive line.
Yep.
Jonnu Smith, I think the playbook is going to evolve as we head into Mac Jones year 2. And I think that he'll be used differently. I think he was banged up this year. I also think he's having a little bit of a tougher time. What's interesting is I look at the Tennessee offense, and I say this because he came from Tennessee. I look at the Tennessee offense, and the Tennessee offense to me, for some reason, seems very unorganized. And I don't know what it is about it. They have A.J. Brown. They have
tell you.
I know, and maybe that's what it is it's organized chaos. I don't know what it is, but it always seemed just like a strange offense to me. So when Jonnu Smith came here, it was a big culture shock for him, where I think Hunter Henry playing with a guy like Justin Herbert, I think you can make a lot of comparisons. I think Justin Herbert is more athletic than Mac Brown, and I'm not making this comparison where I'm saying it's Justin Herbert. I just think there's a lot of comparisons, especially in the passing game between those 2 guys. So I think Hunter Henry just kind of fit into that.
Yeah. I would actually, I was talking about this. I don't know who else I talked to besides you guys, but I was thinking about talking about this with somebody this week, and I just never actually pressed send. We're hearing a lot about comparisons to Mac Jones, and it's his rookie year, so who knows? I'm not saying his arm strength, but I think if Mac Jones turns out to be Phillip Rivers, you're like we've hit really big. Okay. So we did our little autopsy on the Patriots. We aired all of our grievances. It's time to put away those sad tissues and time to bring out the happy ones, because now we get to talk about the absolute utter debacle in Dallas between the Cowboys and the 49ers. That essentially Jimmy G played an excellent 2 3/4 of a quarter of a game. So sorry. But in the 4th, I've never seen a team try so hard to give the other team the win than the 49ers. And maybe it's because they knew that the Cowboys just couldn't, they just couldn't take it. My thoughts on this game, because we can go through this a little bit quicker. I think we owe it to Bobby to at least talk about the fact, like, how dumb is Mike McCarthy? How now, after that game ended, and first of all, I don't know why you call it or why you would even advocate for your quarterback to scramble for 15 yards where there's only 14 seconds left, and you know that he needs to down the ball and hand it to the official, unless you don't know that he needs to down the ball and hand it to the fucking official. That's the only thing that goes through my mind. And we've talked about it on this show a lot this year, that they have all of the talent and no discipline. And that's head coaching.
Yeah, $1 million arm, 5-cent head, right? Like they said about Ebby Calvin LaLoosh in one of my favorite movies of all time, Bull Durham.
Yep.
$1 million arm, 5-cent head. And, this has been one of my gripes with McCarthy for a long time. It's one of my gripes with Tomlin. It's one of my gripes with a lot of coaches in the NFL, that there is no clock management or no clock awareness by a lot of these head coaches. And it's like, it's something that they don't practice, they don't study, and they don't adjust to. And now, so many times we sit here and go, but that's why they're the NFL head coach and we're just talking about it. I could manage the clock of an NFL game better than a lot of head coaches in the NFL.
Sure.
It's just something that could be done.
It's also, by the way, that's not a compliment.
No, right. Exactly. No, it's not. The bright lights, the fans yelling this and that. Well, how has Mike Tomlin, and I know we're talking about Mike McCarthy, but how has Mike Tomlin in all these great years as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers not learned how to manage a clock? Like, you don't think you would become more proficient in that? Like, things in my job that I know I'm weaker at, I adjust to and learn so that I can be better at those things. How do you not adjust to those things as an NFL head coach? Mike McCarthy, Mike Tomlin. The saddest part about that, Mike, and you already said it, is that wasn't a scramble by Dak Prescott. That was a designed quarterback run with 14 seconds and no timeouts, and you have to clock it. Take the official having to touch the ball out of it.
Well, you can't, because they didn't know that.
No, but even if he had, I don't think they get it off. They weren't set.
Right.
They weren't set anyway, so they were screwed to begin with. So how dumb is Mike McCarthy? I think one thing we saw last year that we saw again this year, there's one big consistency in the coaching staff this year that was not consistent before, or there's one big coach that is consistent for the Cowboys that has not changed in the last 3 years, and that's Kellen Moore. My God, that took me a long time to get that out. Kellen Moore has been there he was pre-McCarthy, and he's still there. And while he is a good X's and O's offensive coordinator, I think he'll get better with age. He's about the same age as us, and not everybody can be Sean McVay. But Kellen Moore, who calls the offensive plays, I think he called it, and I think he screwed that up.
Yeah. Listen, knowing that Bobby is our resident diehard Cowboys fan, right? And he always finds the silver lining in any one of the turds that they lay out on the field, regardless of what the year is. And for him to tell us, to give us an edict tonight, when we're recording this, to make sure that we know and that we articulate his frustration in this Cowboys team, that shows you something. And again, Bobby finds the good stuff in all of the bad. This is the reason that they lost this game, is not because of talent. It isn't, because for the first time in quite a long time, Dallas had a well-rounded team. They had talent on both sides of the ball, and they had their quarterback come back and play at an MVP caliber level, do better than he did in almost every statistical category except completion percentage in 2019. And when everything else breaks down, if you are not coached, taught, trained, or instructed on the fundamentals of a game, you will lose. And they had 14 penalties called on them, accepted penalties on them in this game. And for them to even be in the last second is a testament to the talent. But we all knew what was going. We all knew what was going to happen. One of the things that Bobby said to us, today, and I want to echo it, is, as a Cowboys fan, you have to be more enraged as the divisional weekend approaches you because your team isn't there. Because all year they looked like that was going to be a team that would make a deep run. And yeah, I like talking shit to him and busting his balls. But you can't deny the talent. Which brings me to my next question. Can they win? Can they actually win a Super Bowl with Mike McCarthy as their head coach? Or does Jerry need to do what he hasn't done since Bill Parcells for those 2.5 or 3 years. And that was the only time that he's done it since Jimmy Johnson. Does he need to go out and find someone that will disrupt whatever's going on in Dallas? Because Kellen Moore, we hear a lot about him. He's a homegrown guy. Jerry likes yes men. He likes guys that fall in line and don't put too much pressure on him. But again, scoreboard. They haven't won a Super Bowl. They haven't advanced to the conference championship since 1995. So, two-part question, Joe, and you can expound upon it. Will they ever win a Super Bowl with McCarthy as a head coach? And do they need to go outside of Jerry's comfort zone to find someone to manage a team that he did a great job putting together? As a GM, I always go after him. He hit on every single draft pick this year and most of them last year. What are they going to do?
Can they win a Super Bowl with Mike McCarthy as the head coach? Yes. Will they win a Super Bowl with Mike McCarthy as the head coach? No. And I always say something like this, and I can hear Dave's voice in my ears saying it doesn't matter. That's what the NFL needs more of, and he's absolutely right. There's too many big personalities on this team. Dak is a big personality, and we heard it, when his contract was up, what he wanted, what he was gonna command for dollar amount in years, and I don't think Dak had earned it. I still don't think Dak has earned it. I think Dak is a top 10 NFL quarterback. I don't think he's earned to be paid like a top 5 quarterback. I just don't. Something about him, I don't think he has it. Like, McCarthy won a Super Bowl in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers, as much as Mike may hate to admit it, had it. Even if it was just a flash of it, he had it. I don't think Dak Prescott has it. So to expand on your question, can they win with him? I don't think they can win with Dak. Should Jerry go out and bring someone from the outside in? If there was a list of the worst good owners in sports, Jerry Jones is near the top of the worst good owners in sports. He's a great owner. He's a great GM. He pushes that team the way it needs to be pushed in that market. He markets his team perfectly. He built that beautiful stadium. He's got his own radio show. He goes on podcasts all the time. He talks to the fans. He's not a down-to-earth person. But we know that because he does the draft on his $250 million yacht in the Pacific Ocean or wherever the heck he was, which is a different conversation. But Jerry Jones needs to give up the reins to the GM. And I know you just said he's done a great job putting that team together. He needs to give up the keys to that car because I think he thinks more for the coach than I think the coach does. And I think a lot of what he says and does resonates to the coaching staff and the playing style of the team. And I think that's detrimental to the team too. So it's kind of a perfect storm because what's really interesting is, and I didn't say this the other day because Bobby was very emotional, and
as he should have. We
need to stop having to talk him off a ledge every week because it's the same thing with the Cowboys. So just expect it. Like, just go through it. It is so funny though. But anyway, without getting into that, there was a lot of comparisons made on Sunday by Bobby between Mike McCarthy and Jason Garrett. He said it straight up. He said, this is Jason Garrett all over again. But Jason Garrett's gone. Mike McCarthy's here. But what's the one constant? Jerry Jones. So it's not Mike McCarthy. It may not have been Jason Garrett, although Jason Garrett sucks. He was fired as the Giants GM in the middle, Giants offensive coordinator in the middle of the season.
By a moron, Joe Judge. I mean, by an inept head coach.
Well, yeah, he's a special teams coordinator. But the point is Jerry Jones is the common denominator here. I think he's the reason why Mike McCarthy won't win a Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys as the head coach, because you're right, they have the talent, but they can't put it together. They can't finish.
Yeah, I think it's less about the person and more about the concept, right? I think we know we've always talked about here in New England, sometimes the GM would really screw the coach, and they're the same person, right? He had to outcoach because of how bad the GM did. It just turns out he was both. In this situation, I think more often than not, you can point to drafts. I would say more recently, we'll just say since 2015, 2016, Jerry has done a really good job of acquiring talent and drafting talent.
Outstanding drafter.
But what he won't do is put someone in a position as a head coach to do what they want with that talent, right? And I could be wrong because I'm not a diehard Cowboys fan, but I think that actually makes me more equipped to have this conversation, just like you. It looks like Jerry wants to win a Super Bowl his way more than he wants to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Without it, and that's exactly what I meant. And that really kind of says what I said in what I was trying to say in so many words. He's always wanted to do it his way. It's Jerry's way or the highway. That's what we hear from down there anyway. So
yeah, it's like, oh yeah, because he probably harkens it back to, well, I won with Barry Switzer. Yeah. But that team was all but handpicked and coached up by Jimmy Johnson, right? So you got lucky that you still had all that talent that a buffoon could walk in and win a Super Bowl with.
Sure, it was like John Gruden winning a Super Bowl in Tampa.
Well, the same thing, but John Gruden in that Super Bowl had both teams that he had one team that he built and one team that he inherited, and they were both in the Super Bowl. So I think that's probably a testament to how we could do that. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. We'll be getting just angry messages. One last thing before we move on to the divisional round, real quick. Is Jimmy doing to Trey Lance to a lesser extent right now so far what Brady did to Jimmy?
No.
Do you think Jimmy's doing enough to keep his job next year, or is he just raising his trade value?
I think Jimmy has proved that he can be a starting NFL quarterback. We still see him on the injury report every week, which was one of your biggest gripes with Jimmy Garoppolo. I would also say, not comparing the two guys, but we always saw Tom Brady on the injury report. Now, the difference was Jimmy actually gets hurt. Tom was just there because he had an ache or a pain, and they just put him on there for Bill to feel like he was being hilarious. Jimmy Garoppolo is a real NFL quarterback. I've said this from the start. Is he doing to Trey Lance what Tom Brady did to him? No, I think he's doing to, for the reasons that you think, no. I think he's doing to Trey Lance what Tom Brady did to him in spite of his coach, who clearly doesn't want him. I just don't think Kyle Shanahan wants him there. So I think he's raising his trade value. I think he could go to a lot of places and be a starting quarterback, but I don't think he would be as successful somewhere else than he is in San Francisco. But the problem is that at some point in year 2 or year 3 of Trey Lance, somebody's going to get antsy. And it's either going to be Kyle Shanahan or Trey Lance, and Trey Lance is going to say, listen, if you're going to keep this guy around, fine, but I need to be playing. I need to do something. He can clearly play. We know Trey Lance can play. I think he needs to be refined a little bit more. I don't think he's as close to being a good starting NFL quarterback as Mac Jones is, and I think Mac Jones is already a good starting NFL quarterback. But Jimmy's earned his job in San Francisco. It's just a matter of if Kyle Shanahan will keep him there. He's a really good game manager. I've seen, especially in this game last week, I saw a lot of similarities between Jimmy Garoppolo and Mac Jones. I mean, they manage the game well. They have similar arms. Mac Jones is a tough son of a gun, though. I mean, he's tougher than Jimmy G will ever be.
Oh yeah.
And just to kind of throw a little bit of a lighter side to this, Jimmy Garoppolo is the best looking quarterback in the NFL, so got to keep him around.
My grandmother would disagree, but before we move on, she loves Mahomes.
He's a pretty good looking guy too. Just keep his brother in the room.
I would just say that before we move on, I hope that we did a good job at least talking a little bit about the frustration that a Cowboys fan would have from an outsider's perspective. It was so comical to watch, but if that was my team, I would be absolutely devastated. But we've been there, right? I literally look at every postseason run in the last 25 years as every postseason run of the Red Sox up until 2004. They're just going to do enough to make you believe, and then they're absolutely going to defecate down your throat and make everybody watch and laugh at you. One last thing on this, and I'll let you, if you have a comment. I think we learned a lot about the type of player and person and coach that McCarthy is and Dak Prescott are in their post-game interview about how they were okay with the fans throwing trash on the field when they realized that it was about the refs. What happened at the end of that game was not the referee's fault. It was a lack of coaching, a lack of discipline, and a lack of understanding of the fundamentals. Again, you say what you want. He never won a championship. You can go back and watch the highlights. Any time when the clock was running in the fourth quarter and time could have expired, Arizona Cardinals, Larry Fitzgerald ran the ball to an official to have them spike it to get set because he knew the rule. He knew what needed to happen. This was just clearly they didn't know and they did not want to initially accept the responsibility.
It's amazing and this kind of goes into the psychological and sociological side of the sports fan, but the mob mentality in sports is just so it's always so amazing to me, and I consider myself a rules snob, especially when it comes to football, and it's always so funny to be looked at as a leper when, whether it's sitting in the stands at Gillette or hanging out with friends, and I say something very confidently, and they're all pissed off about something, and I say something very confidently that does not agree with what they say because it's just the way it is, and you're looked at like a leper for being right, and we see that a lot in today's society, especially with what's going on in the world. We see that so much, and for anyone to think that was the official's fault, it's asinine. I saw a comment the other day on Facebook.
I understand why a fan would think that, but they're not paid to understand the rules.
No, but if a player and a coach, but that's the other thing too, is we've seen that in NFL games where Donovan McNabb didn't know that you could tie in an NFL football game. It's like, how do you not know the game that you play? How do you not know do you only know the rules for your position and the positions around you? Or do you literally just not know the rules of the game? Because that's a problem. You need to know the game that you're playing. I mean, those guys are paid to know the game inside and out. But to that end, there was unfortunately, I decided to dive into a comment section about this game, and there was an Eagles fan in there that said that the NFL referees took away 6 to 8 Eagles wins this year. 6 to 8 Eagles wins. 6 to 8. That's so you thought the Eagles should have gone 17-1 or 16-1.
16-1, yeah.
Basically what you're saying. A message to the fans. The referees don't take games away from your team. The jokes are funny, but the jokes have gone too far. The people said for years, and somebody said that like Tom Brady pays off the refs, and it's like no, but I mean we see it in the NBA all the time. Here's a smaller example, right? Like, do guys like LeBron James garner more calls than other players? Absolutely. Superstars automatically get more calls. There is a sense of favoritism, and this is another problem in sports. And again, going down a rabbit hole that people don't want to talk about. And they're like, well, it's Tom Brady, so he's going to get that call. Yup, he is. Like, the plain and simple. He's going to. Those guys are going to get those calls. But I can assure you that the referees are not out to screw your team. The game isn't rigged, and that's just not what's going on here. The Dallas Cowboys screwed themselves because they ran for it with 14 seconds left and no timeouts to the middle of the field, my friends. So if you start throwing things on the field, that's on you, man. I mean, fans that, first of all, anybody that threw something on the field is just a piece of crap. I mean, you no respect. I mean, they do it in Buffalo. They do it in Dallas. They've done it. They do it all the time in Cleveland. They were throwing batteries at referees one year in Cleveland. I mean, just cut that shit out. At the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal, and it's not going to make or break your life. Get over it.
I would say, though, and again, I'm not advocating. So, for anyone out there that's looking to cancel me, you're not going to get me this time. I'm not advocating for anyone out there that's in the stands to throw trash. or to throw any objects on the field, right? What I will say is there is a big difference between paying for a ticket and thinking that something had happened that went wrong and not understanding the rules, and being paid to play in that game and echoing the same sentiments, right? You can't do both. Okay. So rapid fire round real quick, divisional round outlook, right? So I'm going to read you the game, read you a little bit of a byline about the game, and then I want you to tell me who you think is going to win and why. And we'll try and keep this under 85 minutes for the segment. So Saturday, January 22nd, we have number 4 seed Bengals at the number 1 Titans. The Bengals are in the divisional round for the first time in 31 years, and they will be playing a Titans team that will more than likely have Derrick Henry on the field for the first time since October. Who wins the game and why?
Bengals. They're on a roll. The Bengals are on a roll, and something about the Titans doesn't sit with me. I mentioned their offense earlier, just seems like controlled chaos. Having Derrick Henry back is going to be an X factor for them. Of course, the guy is one of the best running backs possibly to ever play the game. He's outstanding. But as Mike has said many times, you can't win a championship with a running back as your best player. You can get there with a running back as your best player. This Bengals team, Zach Taylor, what a job this guy's doing. I had this guy out of Cincinnati before he had barely stepped off the plane last year. He's doing a great job with this team. Joe Burrow is the real deal, man. Jamar Chase is absolutely incredible. This team loves playing for him. They love playing for Zach Taylor. That defense has been when the offense is clicking, and funny how we come back to this, when they have that guy, right? When they have that guy, Joe Burrow right now in his second year is that guy. Yeah. That defense plays better. The Bengals over the Titans.
You know what? I wholeheartedly agree, but I'll just add a caveat that I think in this game, or really any game that the Titans are in, it's dependent on who gets the ball first and what type of offense they have. Yeah. Right. So if the Bengals do show up and they are that high-powered offense, and they put up 7 points on their first drive, you've really just relegated Derrick Henry in that game, because you can't dedicate 35 handoffs to him and drain all that clock if Joe Burrow can just go do, not to the same extent, but kind of replicate what Mahomes did to them in the AFC title game a couple of years ago, right? So I think Bengals. I have the Bengals in that one too.
Yeah, I'm with Craig. As a lifelong Bengals fan, I think it's going to be a great game for the Bengals on Saturday.
That's right. 49ers at Packers. So Aaron Rodgers gets a chance to beat the one team he's not been able to knock off in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers is 0-3 all-time in the postseason against the 49ers, but he did beat the 49ers this year and lead Green Bay to a 30-28 victory over San Fran in week 3. Who wins?
Green Bay. And I think there's a few factors that play into this. You're playing in Green Bay in late January at night in it's going to be a very loud Lambeau Field. And as much as Aaron Rodgers has had an incredible season, right? And I know your feelings on him that he poops his pants at this point in the year. I don't think he's going to do it yet. I think he can get past this week. I don't know if the 49ers have enough to get there. I think they're a mostly prolific team. Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuel have been very good for them offensively. George Kittle's been okay. Jimmy's been playing well, and that defense is dangerous. They may or may not have Nick Bosa after he left with a concussion last week. He's a big factor. If he can play, they have a better chance because that defense is better with him on it. If the 49ers are not going to see the Cowboys again, if that makes sense. This isn't going to be the Cowboys. This is the Packers. Matt LaFleur is a better coach than Mike McCarthy, even though Mike McCarthy has a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. But the Packers will take this one. I don't think it'll be easy. I think the 49ers will give them fits and make it frustrating. That's the kind of team the 49ers are, but the Packers get by.
Yeah, I want to say that the Packers are going to go out there and lay an egg, but in reality, I think that the 49ers are going to beat them in overtime in this game. I think it's real. I think, you can say, yeah, Aaron Rodgers is 1-0 in Super Bowls. Great. He's 1-5 in conference title games. He chokes. This is what he does. And all the things that you talked about Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco offense, That's real. Now, I don't know that the Packers have an answer for Debo, Kittle, and Elijah Mitchell, who's playing like everyone thought he could have played earlier in the season. Finally, so if that happens, I think it will be close. I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way. I promise you, you heard it here. I will never pick Aaron Rodgers in a game that happens in January or February. It will never happen. So on Sunday, 3:05 Eastern time, we have the Rams going to Tampa Bay. So Tom Brady and the Buccaneers will get a chance to make up for one of their losses that they had in the regular season. That's back in week 3. The Rams beat the Bucs 34-24. I think the big difference in this game is that this will be played at home. Tampa was 8-1 this year at home, and also I know that this is clouded stats because he was the quarterback here for such a very long time. Tom Brady is 134-27 at home in his career. He is currently 16-5 as a member of the Bucs. So I think home field advantage matters right now. And I also think that I truly believe that the Packers are going to get eliminated. So if the Bucs win, they'll be the top seed in the NFC. I think what we saw last week, it was the Eagles, but there was something different about the way that defense was playing. It looks like that they were able to turn on the switch and flip the switch last week. If Leonard Fournette comes back and is anywhere close to the type of player that he was in the first 8 weeks of this season, I think it's going to be a game. I don't know that there's going to be any blowouts that happen on divisional weekend. I think Stafford traveling to Tampa, I think the moment gets a little bit too big for him. I do think he has a really good coach. I really like McVay, and we'll see. This is a pick 'em for me, but I do think that Tampa walks out with the victory.
This is the toughest game to pick this weekend. I agree with you on the 49ers point and why you wouldn't pick Aaron Rodgers. So it's like I picked the Packers, but I can see the 49ers winning. This one, it's a pick 'em. Are the bright lights of Tampa going to be too much for Matt Stafford? That's a good point that you just made. Like you kind of have the same feeling with Matt Stafford, close to, but less so than you do with Aaron Rodgers. It's almost the same where it's like, all right, well, he hasn't done anything until this year, so why pick him against Tom Brady? We know that Tom Brady has beaten Sean McVay in a Super Bowl. We know that Tom Brady is known for making his opponents unsettled, and the Rams are a team that I said when OBJ went there and even before that there's a lot of big names there. Can they handle the pressure of going up against Tom Brady? I think the Rams can pull this up, and I'm going to pick the Rams. And the reason I'm going to pick the Rams is because their momentum is so high right now. Now, not that the Buccaneers isn't, but the Buccaneers are on such a consistent path. They've been very consistent. And that's a good thing. That's in their favor. I think this Rams defense is very good. I think the Rams offense is too overpowered for what the Buccaneers defense can throw at them. And I think Matt Stafford, with the weapons he has, I think he's more confident in these weapons now than he ever was in his weapons in Detroit. And I'm not saying Calvin Johnson. I'm just saying overall in general. Now, he doesn't have a Calvin Johnson type, but he does have Cooper Kupp. He's got Tyler Higbee, who's a very good tight end in this league. He's got Odell Beckham Jr. It still hurts to say that, but he's been very good. He's got a really good team. Van Jefferson has been really good. I think the Rams are going to take this. The short form. I think the Rams can take this. I think it's going to be a really close game. If it comes down to Brady having to lead a small comeback at the end of the game, then it's probably going to go to Tampa. But if the Rams play this right, and if Sean McVay can learn from his previous transgressions against Tom Brady, the Rams can take this. I think it can be Rams Packers in the NFC Championship.
I think Scotty Miller is going to be the MVP of this game because I think Jalen Ramsey
is going to do it again.
I think Jalen Ramsey is going to absolutely shut out Rob Gronkowski. I think that they're going to take away Brady's ability to go to him. So it's going to be Scotty Miller. But I do think that the Bucs are going to win. I just trust Brady to not make a mistake more than I trust Matt Stafford not to make a mistake and not cut in time. Final game on the docket is the number 3 Buffalo Bills traveling to Kansas City at 6:30 p.m. on Sunday. I think it's probably the most anticipated game of the divisional round. You're going to be getting a rematch of last year's AFC title game. I think we've learned more about the Bills this year, right? They were able to kind of get that monkey off their back. And I don't know. I know that Kansas City can score, but I don't know that Kansas City's defense can stop Buffalo from scoring. And maybe Buffalo doesn't make the mistakes that they made last year. Maybe the moment isn't too big for them. I do think that what you saw last week on the field against New England was their coming out party and was like their Super Bowl. So I'm going to take the Bills. I think the Bills are going to go to the AFC title game.
Buffalo's a wagon with a capital W. And I just think they're so good, man. And the Chiefs, you and I have said it, and we've all said it this year, but you and I have said it, I think most predominantly, is that the Chiefs have a flaw. It just, especially in that offense, which sounds weird to say, but there's a flaw in that team that I just can't put my finger. Andy Reid is probably the best coach remaining in this playoffs. Like, overall, he's the best coach remaining of the 8 head coaches. Can he be that factor that gets them past Buffalo? Buffalo has a problem sometimes putting up performances back-to-back weeks. It's almost like they get tired and it's like, all right, we spent all our energy on the Patriots. We're just not going to be able to against the Chiefs, and that's kind of really short form. I like Buffalo here too. I really like Buffalo. As a lifelong Buffalo Bills fan, Bills Mafia. That sounded gross as a Patriots fan coming out of my mouth. I know, I'm sorry. I love this Bills team, man. I loved them in the preseason. I've loved them all season long. That Josh Allen is a really good quarterback. Devin Singletary has figured out how to be an NFL running back. They have prolific wide receivers. They have a really, really good tight end in Dawson Knox. That defense is ridiculous. And I'll tell you what, that's a hell of a coaching staff. I mean, McDermott, Dable, Frazier. I mean, Dable and Leslie Frazier, man, after he left Minnesota as the head coach, it was like, what's he going to do? And now look at him. He's coaching one of the best defenses in the NFL, and he's got a chance to go to the AFC title game. And same thing here, as I said, with the Bengals. I think the Bills they just have that guy. They have that guy that has the it factor right now. And all I can say is I think the AFC Championship between Joe Burrow and Josh Allen in Buffalo is going to be a great game.
Wholeheartedly agree. And if we get out now, we'll do this in less than 90 minutes. So for Broadway Joe Malkin, this is Michael Marcangelo saying thank you so much for listening to Missing the Point.
Electricast. Welcome to Tuning Into Sound Wellbeing, where we harmonise your mind, body and soul. I'm Amanda, your sound therapy expert.
And I'm Stephen, the curious explorer uncovering the mysteries of sound.
Together we explore vibrations, frequencies and the power of sound therapy and tuning forks.
Discover ancient wisdom, reduce stress and tune into a healthier life. Subscribe to Tuning Into Sound Wellbeing today.
Miles, are you ready to record our promo for Season 2 of the Wannabet podcast?
David, have you ever seen a grown man naked?
Miles, we're not here to quote lines from Airplane. We're here to tell people that Season 2 starts August 18th.
But I like Airplane.
I know you do, but Wannabet is a sports betting podcast. Each week we bet $1,000 on the NFL teams and games that we love.
Well, that sounds like fun.
It is fun. And last year you picked over 60% of your games correctly.
How'd you do?
We're not talking about that. We are telling people that they can find us every Friday. So no more movie quotes.
Roger.
Electricast. Electricast.